difficult.
What I would like to ask is, with this Carillion, the collapsing it into private contracts within the National Health Service, could this be the turning point where we can actually put the public service back into the hospitals? Because what's been happening, private companies have been going in, and I've spoken to the staff because I'm in and out of hospital, and they say they keep working under different people and different hours, different conditions. So this is one way we can actually get the public back into public services.
Do you want to take three?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at some chairs at the front if you want to come down, in the middle here. Okay, okay. David, and then David.
It seems to me that STPs will lead directly into ACOs, and that's privatisation.
ACOs?
Accountable care organisations, and then you've got charging and rationing and all the rest of it. So it seems to me that we have to stop the STPs.
Yeah.
So my question is, are Labour MPs in this region and outside this region committed to that idea? And if so, how do we help you do it?
Could I just make a comment? Thanks, Chair. My name's Dale Holland. I'm a member of the Labour Party. I understand other people might not be. I'm also a councillor in Sunderland and an active trade unionist. I think we've got to realise that the NHS isn't something that stands alone from the rest of society. Because when, is it John? Yeah. When John was talking about Nye Devon setting up the NHS, at that very time, there were people in America in the Chicago Business School planning as to how to destroy the public sector across the world. And we're reaping the benefits of this now. So we can't defend the NHS without defending schools, without defending universities, without defending local authorities, without renationalising the railways. It's all part of the same thing. And I think we need to realise that the fight's got to be broadened. It can't be just about the NHS in Sunderland or South Shields or Newcastle. It's got to be about defending the public sector. And these people are now known as neoliberals, and they are winning the argument across the world at the moment as to how to undermine public services like the NHS. We've got to realise that, we've got to work together, we've got to build alliances across all kinds of public sector organisations, all kinds of political parties who are opposed to that, to defeat neoliberalism and to re-establish social democracy and a public sector with people who work in it, who have a public service ethos to serve people, not profit. Thank you.
We can answer. Do you want me to? Do you want to do the on Rosalind? I'll just go through and do what I can. Then you can pick up all the bits I've missed. On Rosalind's question about Carillion and the NHS.
Did you want to comment on what's been said, Ken? No. You wait.
That's connected to.
I think.
Well, I'm sorry, but mine will be a question. Public health worked for a lot of years, as you know, Sharon. Where does public health best sit? NHS, local government, voluntary sector?
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the big things that Lansing did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Rosalind. Carillion in the NHS. I mean, as all the statements we've had and questions on this week, they've said that anybody who worked for Carillion in the public sector should turn up as workers as normal, and they'll get paid as they normally would. So hopefully for those that might be, and I don't know if there was or is any, they might have been working on, say, some expansion plans on new buildings within the NHS. I don't think, obviously Carillion were active on the Vogue site here, but I don't know if we had any Carillion in any of our hospitals. Did we do anything?
I think we've got more in like local authorities as well, like
Housing
schools,
developments.
education, school education.
Run the services.
So I don't think there was any in our hospitals, but there might be some Carillion workers who are actually working on an expansion or a new A&E or in some part of the country. So I can't say that out of all, 700 contracts or whatever they were given, that none of them will be connected with the NHS. And I hope that therefore the commitment that the Prime Minister and all the other ministers who said it, that anybody who was working within the public services should turn up for work, they'll be paid as normal. That applies to those, but probably they're subcontractors. So there'll probably be, they might be sort of working on a building connected with the NHS or a school or another public service, but they'll be working for a subcontractor, and that's the worry, because who will pay them? And I hope that I heard today, which is good news for the apprentices, because there was 1,400 apprentices, and people have stepped up already and started organising. There was a lady on the Victoria Derbyshire show saying straight away, and I helped to promote the one at the Stadium of Light, that I think took place today, to that any apprentices who were working for Carillion could go along, and they're trying to find new employers to match them with to finish their, because I had a young lad on who'd done 1.5 years, and he was saying, well, it's all that for nothing, and it won't be as long as they can find a new engineering company or construction company to take them on. So I know there's lots of good things going on, and people trying to step up, but so I can't answer your question directly about what the effect will be on the NHS. I hope it's minimal, but I don't actually know if Carillion, what contracts they have within the NHS. That's the thing, that because they would subcontract, you wouldn't necessarily always see the Carillion badge. Lots of people in the country hadn't even heard of them till sort of earlier, this week when this all happened. They were one of those huge, there's a couple of companies like that, worldwide sort of multi-conglomerate companies, that the umbrella company, the real company, you haven't heard of, although you've heard of lots of the ones that exist. And this is one of the big issues, for today, if we talk about capitalism, that the capitalist system, this happens, and they quite like it. They quite like that sort of to be anonymous at that level, because then if anything goes wrong here, it doesn't harm the mother brand, the sort of the. But obviously this time that was the one, the mothership was the one that crashed. So we're just seeing how this form of capitalism is starting to disintegrate now. And
we'll be long because I haven't got this room today, quarter 9, haven't we? So we need lots of questions.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I do go on. Dave. Yes, MPs are on board, definitely, about STPs. Made up all across the country, the pattern was the same. That I know I met with Gemma and Roger when we were still waiting for the details. We didn't have any of the, so we were trying to campaign against something that we still didn't have the details of. So this was happening across the country. Justin in our team, Justin Madders it comes under his brief, but you can take my word for that. All Labour MPs are against it. I can't speak for the Tory MPs. I'm sure they are for it. And how you can help is what you're doing now, engaging with your MPs, getting them to come along, and supporting them with the intelligence that I know Gemma and Roger and John do, and feeding that in, being their sort of feet on the ground. And Dave's about Ken's question about public health, where does it best sit? The different people have different schools of thought on that. I think there is when you speak to some councillors in some parts of the country, they say it's working well, it's coming under local authority, because then ideally sort of the localism agenda, but it needs to be integrated with the NHS. It does all need to work together. And we know one of the reasons if they'd done what they did with putting it under local authority control, then hadn't cut the local authority budgets as they did by over 50%, we'd be seeing a very, very different accountability and process for public health than we're seeing now. But because they cut councils so much, then they cut the public health budget, then they gave it public health to councils, and then said get on with it. It was their way of just parking it and passing the blame for public health services not being as good as they were to councils, especially Labour councils, because we've suffered the biggest cut. So it's all part of their political strategy to give Labour councils a hard time. Do you want to put
I think we'll just stop there. Let's have some more questions. Right, go on in, and then Mark. Thank you.
Hi, Gordon Chapman, trade unionist from Sunderland. Yeah, just obviously soon as we can, hopefully we'll get a Labour government back in. But do we have a starting point of which area of the NHS we're going to make public that's now private, if you like, rather, target first? Thanks.
Yeah, my name's Mark Greenfield. Spent most of my life in the NHS and an academic teaching in the health service. My fundamental question to Sharon, I really appreciate the fact that you're one of the few MPs that are signed up to the NHS reinstatement bill that's being led wonderfully by Caroline Lucas in Anne Greenwood and previously Dr. John Pugh, but he's not there to support the other two now. And I think this is the key area we've actually got to work on at this moment in time. I watched avidly that Parliament programme in the summer when Caroline and Anne were moving that reinstatement bill. And the ridiculous question we got from the Tory side all the time, the NHS cannot afford a major reform at this moment in time. And everybody uttered that word, and it's absolutely crazy because here we have underneath these accountable care organisations being piloted up and down the country, millions of pounds going to them, but there are no public accountabilities tied into them whatsoever. And the danger is, if we don't get the NHS reinstatement bill, that will knock it out. But we've actually got to work with members across all political parties for them to realise that we've lost the principles, the foundations, the three pillars that the NHS was established in the first place. And that's what we need to be saying in public, because I don't think the public realise. And of course, Hunt wants to keep it quiet, doesn't he? Under the name of better integration between health and social care. Yeah, we all go along with that. It should have happened bloody years ago. But the point is, this is being used as a misnomer for something that is very, very dangerous, and the public bit of that is going to be stripped out even more. So we've actually, that's got to be the vigour of our attack, and to raise that awareness within our local populations. Thank you for your bit, Sharon, but do persuade your two fellow members of Parliament in Sunderland to do the same. I've written to that effect and I've had no response.
Hello Sharon, just a little quick, I would like to pick up on about Carillion. According to BBC News yesterday that they are involved with the Liverpool hospital that's just been built, and the works had to stop on that. So they are involved
with the hospital.
Another thing is we've got to educate the GPs as well, not just respect the plan, for using it as an emergency department. For example, my surgery, if I can't get an appointment, they tell me go down to an emergency. Now that's not a very feasible situation, because you're propping up something that's not even a severe emergency, but this is what we get time and time again from the GPs. Or go down as an emergency, sit there and you'll get seen to, but that's adding more pressure. And it's not just the government that's at fault, it's the GPs who think, oh well, you can't get appointment, you just go down there. It's not right.
Thanks. I'm going to let Sharon come back on this, because some of them were actually directed to you.
Where did I get up to? Ken Gordon. Right, the very first thing we would do, we've said that, is to reverse the Lansley Act, the Health and Social Care Act, which a lot of what we've been seeing, SDPs, ACOs, all of that's a really good place to start. So if we started there, take no nonsense from the Tories about, expensive top-down reorganisations, because we'd be undoing their expensive top-down reorganisation. That is a disaster for the NHS. And we know why they're doing it, and we can see the results of that. So I think once we did that first, then we would just carry on. We're working closely with the SHA, the Socialist Health Association, who helped write the NHS reinstatement bill, and they've been I'm finding them really useful to work with. I meet regularly in London with them, and so that's where we would start. We would fill those 100,000 vacancies. We'd remove the pay cap. We'd make NHS staff feel you know, valued and not overworked and underappreciated, you know, by paying them properly. We'd restore the nurse bursaries, we'd restore grants, we'd scrap fees. And if anyone says how we're going to pay for that, well, it's easy. We just reverse all the tax cuts that the Tories gave to the millionaires and the corporations. So, you know, the money is there. It's all about choices, who you hurt and who you help. And, you know, we'd be hurting some of the people they've helped over the years, and that have probably pocketed millions, if not billions. So, you know, they might start to feel a bit of a squeeze, but that money is what we would spend on the NHS and on public sector workers across the board, undoing a lot of the things they've done across the board, not just to the NHS, but across all of our public services. And don't let anybody tell you when you know, oh, you know, if they've got a magic money tree. The money is there. They can find the money like that when they're wanting to give a little tax cut to, you know, to corporations. Or we've got the lowest corporation tax now in the G8 of the world's most developed countries. We've got the lowest corporation tax. It's just a nonsense. So the money is there and it can be found. Tax loopholes, close a few of those. There's so many things we could do. NHS reinstatement bill, yes, I've signed it. You know, encourage as many other MPs as I can to do that. And the next set I wrote here in big letters, so I wouldn't forget, is public. And this is, I'm pleased I've got a chance to say this, because somebody eventually said it on Question Time last night. And this is what we need. You know what I'm going to say? Yeah. We all know this, but there's only a few of us here. You go out onto the streets out there, there's thousands and thousands of people just in Sunderland, hundreds of thousands across, well, hundreds of thousands in Sunderland, hundreds of thousands in Newcastle. You know, there's probably a few million across the northeast. We need them to be saying what I'm going to say now, and what this woman said on Question Time last night, is that this is deliberate. They are running the NHS down into the ground deliberately in order to privatise it. We've got to get that message across to people. We all know that. We get it instinctively. We know what they're doing. But until people en masse start to realise and start to understand how precious this is and how, you know, how little time there is really to save it, then we need the people to be taken to the streets. You know, if they were taken to the streets in the numbers that I've just described, there'd be a general election within a few months. If across this country, people, public, if they really, really understood, and if the NHS is precious to them as it's precious to us, and that we know it is, and that's why they keep it all, that's why Jeremy Hunt wears his little badge and stands up at the dispatch box and starts every false hollow sentence with, I want to commend the excellent work of our NHS staff who do a terrific job, and this lot opposite who just are talking them down all the time. We're not talking the NHS staff down all the time, we're talking the flipping government down all the time, who are making the NHS staff lives a misery and who are trying to privatise and tear apart our NHS. But they're trying to turn it and say that we're talking the NHS down, we're talking the staff down. The NHS has performed more hospitals than ever before. That's not thanks to him, that's thanks to the staff. And they're understaffed, and this is why they're all on their knees. And we always shout back, pay them. If they're so good, pay them properly. So we need the people out there in numbers to realise this is not, you know, an accidental NHS winter crisis. This is a deliberate, strategic underfunding of the NHS. They've made a political choice to underfund the NHS for a purpose. And if everybody understood that, I think there'd be marches, there'd be an uproar. But you know, they see Jeremy Hunt with his badge and he says all the right things, and he's got his little Bambi, you know, cute little sort of way about him. You know, there's a reason why she's kept him in that job, because people look at him, general public people who might even vote Tory, look at him and think, oh, he's a decent bloke, isn't he? He's not going to, you know, I don't know why Labour are saying they're trying to privatise the NHS. No, he is. He's flipping wrote a book about it. So yes, public. This is why these groups springing up are so, so important, because we need, all of you need to amplify this and take it out there to the public and get the, you know, social media, Facebook, however you do it, get people exercised about this. And I'm not embarrassed to say, yeah, encourage people to take to the streets, march. We need these marches to be huge. because literally time is running out for the NHS, and there's either got to, if there's got to be a general election. I don't think the NHS can survive till the end of this Parliament under this government.
Can I just ask you about taking the streets and marching? I know there's other stuff going on. I know there's a big march in London on 1st of March, but I think that's against universal credit. I'm just wondering if it might be an idea, maybe trying to join things together a bit to make a bit more of an impact. I mean, I don't know where to start with that. You know, I'm just a participant in it.
Somebody over here?
I'm Stuart Ingram. I'd just like to ask, I mean, regardless of being said about the national, the importance of the national movement to challenge the attack on the NHS generally. I was thinking more, what can we do locally? Now, I know that there's, by 2021, there's an estimated shortfall in Sunderland of about £270 million. And that's obviously going to affect services. And the budget will be given to managers and say, give us some plans to meet these targets. Do you think there's any mileage in say, this group writing to the CCG and the local authority, advising them not to meet those targets, to say, you know, you cannot provide an adequate service if you meet these targets, and we'd advise you to stand up against it and spend the money and run into overdraft?
Yes.
I'm a renal dialysis patient at Sunderland Royal. At present, the clinical commissioning group changed the contract over from North East Ambulance Service to a company called NERAM, which is North East Response Medical Services. This has been going for 4 weeks now. We had a perfectly good service, and obviously due to money, these are the cheapest people to bring their contract. The service is now an absolute joke. I've got patients crying on my shoulder because they're waiting an hour and a half to go home. The hospital staff morale is as low as anything you possibly get. They stay until 12 o'clock at night working overtime when it's supposed to finish 11 o'clock just doing this company. I've wrote the clinical commissioning group twice today regarding the safety of patients and regarding the incompetence of this company. All I keep getting off the clinical commissioning group is, yes, we are looking into it, yes, we will get back to you, I'm a meeting on Monday, and we must work together with this company to make things work. But to be perfectly honest, the patients are absolutely weighed down, actually fed up, because the guidelines are, it must be 30 minutes of transport going home, but when you get like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, they'll be 3 hours early. To be honest, it's getting an absolute joke, and I said, I've never seen morale when the nursing staff's so low. And you imagine the nursing staff is low, the numbers are low at the moment anyway, without this happening as well. But the clinical commissioning group seems hell-bent on providing this cheap service, and if you provide a cheap service, you get nowhere.
Gemma, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I would think the issue on the clinical commission group, if you're not getting the response from them, again, obviously what you could do is go through, obviously, Sunderland Council, the Health and Wellbeing Board. Again, that is an open public meeting, but again, you could either write to the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board. I'm not sure who the chair is now for Sunderland, but you can get that information off the Sunderland website, because the Health and Wellbeing Board actually hold the clinical commissioning group to account. So again, that could be another way that you go through the local councillors, elected members that sit on that committee to challenge the clinical commissioning group.
I'll just comment that there's also in each borough there's a group called Health Watch. So you have a Sunderland Health Watch, and they would also be useful to contact if there's any concerns regarding healthcare provision in Sunderland. I think it's good to write to the councillors, and as Gemma says, you know, health and well-being and health strategy, health scrutiny committees on the council, and it's good to write to your MPs.
It's even better when they reply to you.
Yeah, keep the MPs informed.
Sharon always does.
Yeah, and copy. They don't need to be separate letters. You can do these copies. But also write to Sunderland Health Watch, because they have a statutory duty to represent the people of Sunderland, and they need to know about these problems. So always include them on your CCs, on your emails.
Okay, thank you.
On the, about everyone joining together on the marches, like with the Universal Credit March, I suppose that's where this the Keep Our NHS Public can link up with any of those, and you'd always be welcome, I'm sure, if you turned up with any of your banners and marched with them, just, like the big TUC marches, people will be there with all banners for all, all different banners for different things, and I'm sure that would be the same for any of the Universal Credit marches. They're not going to turn somebody away saying, oh, you've got the wrong banner because you're trying to save the NHS. Say, yeah, come. So yeah, it would be great to have mass marches. I know Keir Hardie, when he was trying to stop the First World War, was calling for, the workers of the world to unite in a general strike, and he failed, obviously, but the war happened and broke his heart. But, we could ask the same here, if people really want to save the NHS and save all our other public, I mean, the TUC have done it every year, don't they? They have a huge, and you would always welcome more marches.
I think there is more coming up actually in London. There are emergency crises of the NHS, but again, so there's many that do come up, and then again there's regional ones, there's local ones, but I think it's right. I think there should be some more better communication right the way across to try and bring it all together. Yeah, to try and obviously march for something, because I think it is right if we wait until this government sees out, I think that will be it with the NHS. Yes.
Thank you. There's somebody behind Mark.